welcome to another episode of Badass Records. This week, Ron Drunkard of Red Kate did me the solid of stopping by and chatting with me about his band and some of their releases, as well as their record label Black Site, which is black-site, site.org, and it is a cooperative that supports local music, so please make sure you check that out. You can find Red Kate on Facebook and Instagram and Bandcamp, and I believe they have stuff where you stream all your business as well. As far as this thing goes, Badass Records is a podcast about people and music. BadassRecordsPodcast.com is the site. You can keep tabs on what's happening with it on Instagram and Twitter. Subscribe where you stream your audio, or if you want to do the video version, it's on YouTube. BadassRecordsPodcast@gmail.com if you want to hit me up, or maybe you want to do an episode, or you know somebody that does. That's about it. Make sure if you're visiting the website, BadassRecordsPodcast.com, make sure you check out the merch tab, and who knows, maybe find something you like. Anyway, that's all I got for you today. Appreciate you stopping by. Hope you enjoy the show. You're not a Zappa fan, are you?
I'm indifferent.
Okay. Have you listened to Joe's Garage before?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Not intentionally.
Okay. It's 3 acts, and it's the story of garage band that gets some notoriety and then signs to a deal with a label, and it destroys everything that they did that. And he narrates in between, not every song, but he makes appearances as a narrator not 5 or 6 times across the 3 acts, and all of it he's whispering into a megaphone. And his name is Ron Hoover.
Oh, really?
From the First Church of Appliantology.
Wow.
Yeah,
No, I've never heard
well,
of this.
so I don't think, I'm not sure how long I've been aware of the existence. I mean, probably whenever Tom Cruise got real big, and it's like, wait, there's a fucking religion that a dude just, what? And it has to do with the stars, and so it's like, well, and then the internet comes to be in one. It's like, holy shit, he's got like books and blah
He's a
blah blah.
Sci-fi writer for years.
Yeah, and then
that was his deal.
Yeah.
And then at some point, I first came across it when I was in high school because I was into sci-fi, and so I knew who he was. And then I figured out, oh wait a minute, this is the Dianetics guy. Yeah, the Dianetics guy wrote these sci-fi books. What the hell is this shit? And started hearing about it. And you're like, wow, this shit is nuts. The guy's invented a fucking religion. We actually know when it was invented, and people still believe it.
Yeah.
He just, no time has been separated to create a myth. He just said, here it is. And they all said, yes.
Yeah, right.
So I just thought, I took the name, like when I first needed an email address, like in the early 90s. Like when I first got email in college, like 91 or 92.
You had email then?
I was in grad school in 92, 93.
For
ecology.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So, yeah, we got email addresses. And I'm like, hey, I need an email address. I'm going to use this. Ron Drunkard.
Ron Drunkard.
Then I eventually got a Yahoo account like in 96 or 97 or something like that. But
well, I've got a couple of his biographies, and such a fascinating mind, talking, in the 70s, we're not too far away from a virus that will attack your autoimmune system, and the government this and that, and I mean like 4 or 5 different examples like that, and it's like, who the fuck are? And then Joe's Garage is like 1979,
Okay.
and so he already knows enough about L. Ron Hoover to have to make fun of him and have so
It was pretty big in California.
right.
I mean, it was because like when I was shocking. I lived in California for a decade. When I moved out there, first of all, it's this giant Scientology church. I mean, we have the one downtown now, but that was normal.
What do we have downtown?
Well, there's a sign. Yeah, that old that building. It's just south of the old original Star headquarters.
Really?
It's a Scientology building.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it has a sign on the top now.
Really?
Yeah, and but those were like, I remember the first time I went to L.A. in the early '90s, in San Francisco. I'm like, this giant building of Scientology. I'm like, what the fuck? It's, just giant sign, 20-story building.
Yeah.
They have a compound. There's this giant compound off near in North Hollywood, and I was blown away. I was like, whoa! And because it's been huge out there amongst the actor, Hollywood scene for a long time. So,
well, oftentimes correspondence to get somebody in the chair starts with a DM on Instagram or Facebook or whatever, and it's like a band member is typically kind of running that platform, and so we can get all the way down to like choosing a date before I'm like, by the way, what's your name? Or maybe I only have first name, and I want to put it in the calendar so that whatever.
Right.
So by the time we got to that point, you're like, Ron Drunkard. I was like, oh my God, that's hysterical. So appreciate you being here. My episode numbers are a little jumbled right now because of the Too Much Rock thing kind of got squeezed in there. So I don't know what episode this will be, but we're doing an episode of Badass Records Podcast, hanging out with Ron Drunkard. Appreciate you being here. Red Kate, black-site.org/red-kate.
Yep.
A no bullshit class conscious punk rock and roll band. What does the class conscious piece mean?
Oh, that a lot of our songs, our whole sort of mindset is that we're aware of class, economic class, and a lot of people aren't. They don't really think that we have an awareness of what it means to be working class and what advantages and disadvantages that has, usually disadvantages compared to the power structure, and so it's about inequality and equity and all, that sort of thing. I mean, I don't know, class consciousness. It's hard to describe when you actually say, what does that mean? But it just means that we're aware of the value of labor and the value of labor in making the economy work for everybody.
Right.
And that all wealth is created by labor. All the source of all wealth is labor.
Yeah.
I guess that's the easiest way to say what that is.
Okay.
And that's
cool.
That's where we come from. And, a lot of our songs, I write the lyrics for everything. And, a fair number of them talk about themes along those lines.
Gotcha.
So that's
cool.
Yeah.
So you guys have been around for over a decade, 3 LPs, When the Troubles Come from 2013, Un-American Activities, all lowercase, 2016, and then Exit Strategy from last year.
Yeah, that just came out in the fall.
Okay, cool.
December 1st, something like that, yeah.
Nice. And then additionally, a not-for-profit record label, Cooperative, Black Site.
Right.
What helped me with the cooperative piece?
Well, it's a different business model. I mean, we're not making any money. The bands own everything. What we're trying to do is actually bring people the first part is we're helping people get records made. Physical item, not just putting your stuff online digitally, along with the million other songs that are going up every month. We're trying to create a cultural artifact that will exist into the future. Whereas if you just put your stuff online, this all came about 2 things. I mean, one was, we've been aware of the record, what record label deals are like. We've all been doing this for a long time, and it never appealed to us. Like, this is just, even an independent label, like, the chances are they're either going to not have any resources to help you anyway. So what's the point of signing a deal with them? Or it's a label that's bigger and they're going to probably screw you, or expect a lot out of you that you can't deliver because we can't tour. We're all middle-aged working people, and we're not going to be able to go take off and go tour for weeks out of the year. So we don't need a label. Let's we can just do this ourselves, right? And then B, we made our first record. It was on Replay Records, but we did all the work. We just wanted to be on a label. So we went to Replay and said, hey, would you guys put it on your catalog? And they said, yeah. And we probably should have started a label then, but we were like, nah, well, they already exist. They've got a few releases. And so the point was we can do it ourselves. So DIY. And the second point was it was becoming pretty apparent that the industry's got real problems. It's not feasible. It's not affordable to make records. It's not affordable to be a band. You can't make, not that you could ever make money, but used to be you could make a living, or you could at least get by and cover your expenses. Maybe not if you got remotely successful, you might not have to have a full-time job.
Right.
That's not been possible for a couple of decades now for almost all musicians. And so one thing that we thought was, well, first of all, we don't need to be a label that's taking half the rights, half the royalties. That's a ridiculous deal. Why should the label get half of the money? There's no money anyway, and you're going to take half of it, right? So, and the second was, we went through all this work to figure out how to make our own record, and we saw other bands in town putting out records, and they just sounded terrible. We're like, because we'd learned some things. We talked to people. I did the research, and we found out how to do some things right. There's a lot of pitfalls. There's a lot of things that can go wrong when you're making a record. And so we had started to figure some of these things out. And so people started coming to us saying, well, what should we do? And I'm like, well, we use this people, we use this people. You want to do this with your test pressings. You want to test this and check for this and this and all this other kinds of stuff. And eventually we're like, you know what? We could just do this for people, and we'll do a cooperative deal where, we have the network of people in the industry set up to make the records and make good quality records. And then, we can front some cash, the bands can pay us back, and the bands get to keep everything. And then we build sort of network, we build connections with people. And so it kind of happened with the first one that really made this all work was Truck Stop Love, because they wanted to reissue some of their old stuff. They never did vinyl. They had a couple of CDs put out in the 90s on a label that had now been sold two or three times. And our rhythm guitar player, Brad Human, had been the bass player in Truck Stop Love. And he's like, hey, maybe we should put a Truck Stop Love record out. And like, let's do that. And they're all cool guys. I'm like, yeah. So we knew how to do it. And they paid, we knew we'd pay it. We knew we'd buy it. We saw enough records to like get all our money back like almost immediately, which we did. It was great. And so that was like, well, we can do this. And the idea was then to start connecting other bands and building a sort of a network. And since we were heading out, it was also about the time we had really started to hit the road a lot. And so we were meeting bands in other towns and bands we'd really liked, young bands. Like, we know how to do these things. We've been doing this stuff. We can sort of pay it forward. And how about some younger bands? And, and so we did that with a couple of bands from Omaha and Tulsa and Minneapolis, and said, hey, we guys get a record made for you guys, And then part of it also is that our drummer, Andy, he's the partner in all this. He wanted to actually start giving away. So he wanted to do cassettes, because you can do a small run of those and get them done in a few weeks, right? Cool. And like for really young bands who really just needed to have something to take on the road with them.
Even if they're just giving it away?
Yeah, just even, they can't afford $4,000 for a record, but they could afford, $300 or $400 for tapes. We were like, well, you know what? We can just raise the money ourselves and just give them the tape. Like, we can get people to donate some money to us. We'll throw in a little bit of cash. And so we did that with Chess Club, which was some young kids out of Lawrence a few years ago. A band called Hummingbird out of Tulsa. We did one for them. We keep like 20 tapes. We sell them, maybe get some of our money back. They get the other 80. It's like we call it a scholarship program. And it was called the Barker G Memorial Scholarship Fund, because Barker was a old guitar player that my drummer Andy played a lot of shows with, played in a band with. When he was younger, and Barker committed suicide several years ago, and so this was sort of a memorial to him.
Cool.
And Barker went on to do a whole bunch of really great, cool bands and played in a bunch of neat stuff. And so that's all these ideas were sort of floating around, kind of came together and coalesced. And like at the same time, I was reading about streaming services and realizing, that it's digital ephemera. I mean, if you are...
What does ephemera mean? Sorry.
Well, what's like ticket stubs and it's just small little things you might put in a scrapbook. This is like the digital version of that. It's like if you're a band and this was like 10 years ago. I read something like I don't know how many 100,000 songs are going up a month or something on the streaming platforms, and I thought, okay, who is going to be able to? You can only consume so much music, right, at a time. Yeah. There's only so many hours in the day, so much attention span. So more music is going out than anybody can possibly take in. You're getting lost in the, how do you get through this fire hose? How does anybody find you in all this noise? And if you don't get to some level of popularity, the minute you stop being a band and stop having an active presence, your stuff's going to disappear. The algorithm is going to forget about you.
Yeah.
And you're going to be gone. And because we'd see all these people's Bandcamp pages, nobody's playing their music anymore. The band's been broken up for 2 or 3 years, and it's as dead as like it never existed, Huh. And so it occurred to me, but at the same time, I'd recently bought a couple of records at one of the record stores in town, and one of the guys who was working there had said, "Hey, I think you'd like this. It just came in, some used stuff." And so I bought it, and sure enough, it was awesome.
Nice.
And that's how I grew up learning music. Yeah. Somebody tells you about it because they know what you're into, and it didn't sound like anything I'd ever heard, but he knew enough about what I liked, and he goes, "I think you might like this." Which, that's another thing. No algorithm ever does that. It just plays the same shit over and over. It's like a variant of the same thing I've already heard 1,000 times. And so I was like, when you get a record, especially if it's a quality product, it looks cool, it looks good, chances are they don't get destroyed. Most of them are going to survive, and they might sit in a bin for months or in a basement somewhere, and then somebody dies, and then all these records go to a store, and somebody filters through them and says, "Hey, this looks cool," puts it on, goes, "Oh shit, who's this awesome band I never heard of?" And it might be in a state 5 states from where you were a band, right? Yeah. But some kid finds it 20 years down the road and finds this record, and you live on. What's the chance somebody's going to be digging through by then hundreds of millions of songs on the internet and ever come across your stuff?
Well, I think the number, when did you say you saw that?
Oh, this was years ago. Now I think it's hundreds, 100,000. It's 30-some thousand a day or something. It's some ridiculous number a day.
Yeah.
And these algorithms they're pushing only the popular stuff. And something like, what's the number, 20% or something of the songs on Spotify have never been played? What? It's a stupid number.
Wow.
And 10% of the artists account for 90% of the plays. I mean, the stats on this it makes no sense. When you start looking at that, you realize you either are going to make it and then you'll be safe on the internet, or if you don't, your stuff is immediately gone. And I just think about all the old bands that I've found over the years that I've just randomly come across, never knew they existed at the time, but now I've got this cool old record that they put out in 1987 or 92. I mean, there's a lot of old CDs from the 90s that have never been put on a vinyl. These bands are gone, but their CDs still exist.
Yeah.
They're not, somebody's going to find those someday. Yeah. And so that was the other side of why we decided to do a record label. It was like, hey, I've seen too many good bands. I grew up in Lawrence in the 80s. And there were too many good bands in that town that never produced anything because we had no record label. We had nobody to put anything out for them.
Right.
And
that's really cool,
their shit's
man.
Gone. I know I'm working on a project I won't get too sidetracked into, but my own band, actually, I don't even know where the masters are to to a recording session we had of my first band. They got lost somewhere.
Hence, pitfalls.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff can happen when you go make a record.
And so that's this kind of thing. It's this way, if we get something actually made, it will be out there. And so that's the Black Site. That's what Black Site's about. And the co-op just means that we're not making any money. We're just trying to cover our costs.
Gotcha.
And,
okay.
You know.
Does Black Site have a social media presence?
Yeah, I mean, as much as I can. They keep changing, I just realized they changed some stuff on Instagram the other day, so now my Black Site account isn't really connected to Facebook like it used to be, and I got to go spend I don't know how many hours getting that straightened out so that I can now cross-post again. It was doing that, that's just, it's one of those things that just makes social media, as we were talking about earlier, so frustrating. It's constantly changing how it works, and who's got time to keep up with all that?
I don't know. I don't know. But is the homepage black-site.org?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
gotcha.
that's the homepage. And we've got, we've done, so Truck Stop Love back, that was our big record, but we've did Emmeline Twist's album.
Oh, you have?
Yeah.
Cool.
And it was Emmeline Twist. We did the Frog Pond record.
Nice.
That was the thing that was the big one we did a couple years ago.
They replied, Heidi.
Yeah.
Replied today.
Oh, okay.
And she's like, sorry, and I looked and it was February when I sent it to her. But she's down. She's
cool.
gonna, yeah.
Yep, cool, yeah. So we, let's see, Fred Wickham Caravan, they had a great country record. We did noise rock stuff, like a band called Fault Finder, which not many people know about because they weren't around terribly long and weren't terribly popular because they're kind of not accessible music, but it's really neat, cool noise stuff. But they wanted to do a record, so we got the record made for them. Who am I thinking of? And like a band called No Thanks out of Omaha.
Okay.
We only did a tape for Chess Club. We eventually did their first record. Hummingbird, we did a record for them out of Tulsa. Liquor Beats Winter was a cool old blues punk rock band out of Rochester, Minneapolis, Minnesota. I know I'm forgetting somebody. Headlight Rivals out of Manhattan.
Okay.
Did their record for them. So yeah, we were just trying to, the whole point is just trying to build some community and connections and network of people to places to play. And
that's awesome.
And so that was the idea. That's the idea. I mean, it's a lot of work.
I bet.
But
I mean, like.
Well, the pandemic killed a couple of bands. It killed a couple of our young bands didn't make it through the pandemic, and we really thought they were ready to tour. Their first record was going to come out. They were going to go tour, and then just they couldn't make it. They couldn't make it through, and and that was kind of that was disappointing. I mean, and then what happened? The things that happened to the record pressing industry during the pandemic were just awful. I mean, we had Fred's record took a year. Frog Pond's record took a year to get made. There was quality control problems all along the way. Jeez. We were fighting. They got all the pressing plants got overloaded, and so it got really. Well,
I'm sure, like that's a facility where people go to physically work, and many people are now not actually doing that themselves. They're at home waiting to figure and making music. And
everybody wanted record sales skyrocketed because people had all this extra money and nothing to do with their money and time, but to go buy records. They couldn't go to shows, so all that money that was going to shows went into records. Vinyl demand skyrockets at the same time that the supply chain goes to shit. And I mean, it was I won't bore people with all the details,
right?
But it was. We had issues all over the place.
I'm sure there are still some wounds that haven't healed all the way in the production portion of. Yeah,
things have gotten better because I'm now getting offers for discounts from pressing plants, special offers, things must be a little slow now.
Yeah.
But we had shipping problems. We had we had boxes of jackets show up destroyed. Just absolutely, half the jackets were missing out of the box and the bottom was ripped out. And they just left them on the front porch like it was okay. And it's like, fuck me, man.
Bro.
You're like, they were wet. We had one time a box of records, they showed they were wet. And it's like, they've been sitting in water. What the fuck is going on? I mean, FedEx was just, it was unreal. Yeah.
So Red Kate, anyway. Mike Campbell, lead guitar, Sean Hammondtree, rhythm, Andrew Whalen on drums, and then you, Ron Drunkard on bass.
Yep.
Red Kate on Instagram, Facebook, Bandcamp, Apple Music, Spotify.
All of them.
Cool. Are you born and raised here?
I was born in Pueblo, Colorado, but I grew up in Northeast Kansas.
Okay.
Oskaloosa. Then went to school at KU.
Nice.
And then moved out to California in West Coast. Well, first Vegas, then California in '94. Was there for like 11 years.
Pueblo is close to the Springs, right?
South, yeah.
South
It was there was an army depot there. Dad was stationed
Okay.
there before he went to Nam.
Cool.
So yeah.
Siblings?
I have one sister.
Okay.
Yeah, she's a teacher. Lives in Lawrence.
Right on.
Yeah.
Shouts out to the teachers.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, I'm coming from a family of teachers.
Okay.
Mom, dad, my aunt, my sister.
Wow.
Yeah.
Nice. Do you happen to know how mom and dad met?
High school.
High
I
school.
went to high school, Bonner
Okay.
Springs High.
Hey, wow. And were they folks that put on music to listen to in the home when you guys were young?
Yeah, but they weren't big music people. Like
Okay.
nobody. I was the first person I think in the family to play an instrument.
Okay.
You know, my grandparents were farmers, farm folk, and they had moved off the farm by the time I was born. But you know, they were sort of your standard Midwestern German farm folk.
Yeah.
Pretty, nothing fancy or flashy
Sure.
kind of thing. I just happened to be really into music. I had a really good band director. We had a really good band in my school, band music program, and good music teacher when I was in grade school, and then our band director when I was in junior high and high school. So I started playing in 5th grade trombone,
Okay.
and then got into playing bass. We got a new band director, like my 8th grade year, I think, and he started a jazz band,
Oh.
and he got me to play bass. He said, because he knew I was getting into like Led Zeppelin and stuff like that. And he's like, well, you should play bass. And I'm like, yeah, okay. So got a bass, and that's started me on the path of playing bass. And then, I didn't play trombone after high school.
Sure.
But
Yeah.
I kept playing bass.
Nice.
So, yeah.
So if, the records or the radio stations or whatever it is that our folks or the people that are raising us are listening to when we're little, like we're not, it's just sort of part of everything. And then eventually, if you do wind up into music, you kind of venture out down this path of carving out your own taste and so forth. Not necessarily from your list. Is there a first album that you fell in love with or bought with your own money or borrowed?
Yeah. I mean, so like my parents were into CCR.
Okay.
My dad, so I grew up on CCR and Kenny Rogers and K-Tel 8-track compilations that they had, and and I have vague remembrances of Neil Diamond. I mean,
Okay.
there's so much Neil Diamond all the time, and and Willie Nelson, and apparently there was some joke that I don't remember this really, but my parents would say, like, I used to be able to recognize a Neil Diamond song like in the first like 2 or 3 notes.
You?
Yeah.
Wow.
And because they just, I think just they played it so much. I'm like, Neil Diamond. So
Yeah.
I knew what it was,
Yeah.
but yeah. And so and I still have like this, like when I find a Neil Diamond record in good condition that I don't have, I'll buy it, if it's cheap. Because and there's good songs. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
not going to say it's my favorite stuff, but it's burned into you from a young age.
I told this story a number of times, but are you familiar with 12 songs?
12 songs, no.
Okay. It's 07-ish, 06-ish. Rick Rubin produced Neil Diamond.
Oh, is it one of?
Sends him to a cabin,
Yeah.
remote, with his guitar, and he's up there for like 6 weeks or 6 months or something like that. And he comes down and he's like, "Here's what he doesn't know I'm recording, but here's what I got." And Rick Rubin listens to it and get back up there, and it is killer.
Really? I would check that out.
It's like,
I did not realize that he did something with Rick Rubin. Huh.
It's singer-songwriter-y kind of. And there's, some, you talk about class conscious. There's, the subject matter isn't for everyone. Like there's a track called Man of God. But he's got somebody on, I don't know if it's Baby Grand, on a couple tracks.
Cool.
There's some key. I mean, it's
Wow.
so good.
Oh, cool. Okay.
But it's funny. One year, I'm either dating or engaged. I don't remember. And I opened that CD as a gift. I'm like, what? what is this? And she's like, when I was purchasing that, for a half a second, I was like, wait, is it Neil Diamond or Neil Young that he likes?
Oh man!
That is a
world of difference.
So strangely, it turns out
It was
killer record, and we ended up dancing to one of the songs on it at our wedding reception.
Oh, cool. 12 songs, huh? All right.
For me,
it's
not going to be everybody's cup of tea. But.
Yeah.
What about live music? Did you see shows at a young age, or is there something that stood out?
No, I mean, the first time I think I saw a live band, the first live show I went to was it's small town, we have no exposure to anything. We know classic rock. So me and my friends, we started listening to KY 102, and we, me and my buddy, we more than once, I think, joined one of the Columbia House things and got a bunch of records, and then we split them and then taped them.
Nice.
And then bought the few minimum we had and said, okay, we worked it out. That's a pretty good deal. We, and then he got a couple of records I wish I'd gotten at the time, but I have Led Zeppelin 4 and a couple others too, but like the first show I go to was Yes.
Oh.
On that 90210 tour. I think it was like 84, 83, 84 when that record came out. And a friend of mine's mom, she was like the cool mom. His parents were divorced, and she was pretty cool. And she said, well, I'll take you guys. So she goes to the show with us.
Oh, wow.
We had to buy her a ticket.
Yeah.
And we sat in the second to top row on the side of the stage.
Is that the record that has Owner of a Lonely Heart on it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we saw them. And then...
It Can Happen, isn't it?
Maybe. I haven't even listened to that record probably in 30. Not long after that, I stopped listening to Yes. You know what I mean?
That's a very special brand. Of a thing to be into.
And I saw them twice. I mean, two of my first three shows, because then they came back and played at Sandstone, and my cousin had season tickets. My cousins had season tickets, and they lived in Bonner, and so they're like, "Do you want to go?" I'm like, "Yeah, can we go to Sandstone? You want tickets to Yes?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'll take them." So I sat 16th row or something like that. And between that was Heart.
Oh, funny.
Which I sat third row.
Oh, wow.
At one point, I don't know why I lost it, but the bass player threw his towel out to me and I got it. I used to use it cover my stereo.
Nancy and Ann Wilson?
Yeah.
Heart? Okay.
Yeah. So those were my first three shows was Yes, then Heart, and then Yes again.
Thoughts on, I assume you're familiar with the single soundtrack from the 90s, the motion picture.
Movie?
Yeah.
I know the movie. I don't know what's on it.
Oh, my
exactly.
gosh. Oh, my gosh. I mean, okay.
What year did that come out? That's
93?
Yeah, 93.
94, somewhere in there.
That's right about when I was moving.
Okay.
And I moved twice in a year. There's a bunch of stuff that happened that I saw the movie, I think, but I don't remember much about what was going on.
It's a nice sampling of the birth of the grunge scene, if you will. Not the, I don't want to say the birth, but whenever it was blown up.
Right.
Now there's some stuff on there that is not for me. Like the Paul Westerberg tracks. I'm just like, get this. What is this? Get this out of here.
Yeah, by that point, Paul Westerberg had gone somewhere.
I know that there are people that love him. I don't want to yuck anybody's yum, but there's also, Heart does a cover of the Battle of Evermore off of Led Zeppelin 4.
No shit.
And I always
I've not heard that.
Didn't care for that tune.
Yeah.
But I really like their cover of it.
What's the one?
No. That's Immigrant Song.
No. Oh, yeah. Well, that's because I can't sing it. I was thinking. I think I know it's one. I can't do it because I can't do that falsetto.
It's. I want to say Led Zeppelin 4 goes Black Dog, Rock and Roll, and then Battle of Evermore.
Yeah, and that's the one. That's the one. He's singing falsetto.
Yeah, it's very long and just kind of plucky. Bring it back.
That's bring it back. I can see them doing that.
When I saw it, I was like, what? And I was like, oh, okay.
It's crazy.
Okay.
Yeah, we can go on that. The whole grunge thing is not my bag. I was a punk.
Right. Yeah.
I did not like what happened in the early 90s to music. Sure. I fucking hated it. It fucked up the punk scene. I mean, it ruined it to me.
Yeah.
I spent a long time sort of out of punk in the mid 90s because I was just fed up with what happened to it. I came out of the DIY scene and I mean, I saw Nirvana play at the Outhouse.
Yeah.
And they were terrible.
Oh.
Some people loved it. I didn't. I didn't care for it.
Right.
It was too slow and sludgy. And they were also. I now since found out that they were playing on borrowed gear because it should have gotten stolen like the night before in St. Louis or something. I didn't know all this at the time. That's probably why they didn't sound very good. But I just was like, this is slow and just rock, whatever.
Yeah.
And so that would happen. Yeah, I was not into Tad or Mudhoney and all that stuff that was happening. That was starting to come through the Outhouse on a regular basis, and I was just like,
you were into metal?
Nah, and all the metal-y stuff that was happening. I was much more of a British punk, hardcore punk still.
Yeah.
I mean, but so yeah, all that whole thing that happens there with grunge was just sort of like it just seemed to me like the same rock star shit that we were trying to avoid.
Yeah.
It was like, wait a minute, we've now just become the people that we've hated for the last 10 years. Like, what's going on? And plus, you couldn't buy a flannel shirt to save your life anymore.
Right.
You go to the thrift store and they're all fucking gone. Some frat boys walking around with
Yeah.
You go to some party. I went to we go to this friend of mine. We go to this girlfriend and I. We go to this party. We walk through this house and we look like we should know somebody at this party.
Yeah.
Because everybody there looks like people we would know. We knew nobody. This was like, it happened overnight in Lawrence. Like, the punk scene was still pretty small back then. You knew everybody.
Yeah.
And to go to a house party and be like, okay, these people all look like our people, but I don't know a fucking soul here. Because it was just like, what's going on?
Yeah.
It just was crazy.
So trombone is into bass, and that's the whole trajectory of the instruments that you have sat down and
Yeah, I mean, I play guitar, but not in front of people. I use it I can write songs on it. But yeah.
Okay.
That's how, but I'm not really a guitar player. And then singing only came about in the band I was in California because we couldn't find a singer. And they're like, you yell pretty good. You're mostly on key. And I'm like, okay. And I just kept doing it. And
is that that's the whole list of criteria?
I couldn't find anybody.
Right.
We tried. And
right.
So.
Well, so trombone into bass, and then at some point guitar. It's not, you didn't go guitar and then to bass.
Yeah, bass. I was always bass first.
So you are proof positive that Frank Zappa is wrong when he says every bass player is just a failed guitar player.
Unless I failed before I ever started. So maybe
you can't.
It's the simplest instrument.
Well,
like anybody could play the thing. It's like I didn't have to, this is fine. This is not hard. Guitar is like, fuck, there's like at least 3 more strings than I need on this thing.
I know, right? And then the whole I could I don't want to use the word master. I could pick up both. I have played guitar, and I can, but I always lack the discipline to put in the hours to get where I was always like, what is when somebody has the ability to play a guitar and sing at the same time.
Yeah.
I'm like, how do you, and it doesn't matter, but it's much respect to those that do put in the hours and do develop their skill. I was talking to somebody recently. I was like, how did you, at what point along your guitar playing did you incorporate the singing? They're like, I just started that way. And, and you
do it at the beginning.
You have different hurdles and different struggles and different plateaus and so forth.
Yeah, because I'd played for years and just sang backup vocals. Like in my bands in college, I sang backup vocals. So 2 Mile Death Plunge, Wayback Machine, I was just the backups. And not that much, like whoa kind of thing. I hardly, you didn't even really do like entire choruses.
Okay.
So the whole playing and singing at the same time, that took a while. I was just, it was basically just, and it, but it was, and then the singing style was because I've realized the harder you sing, the more naturally you'll find the note. So that's just partly why I sing like I do, is just because that was just how I knew that's how I could find the note.
Right.
If I tried to sing in, a head voice and try and sing pretty, I'd be like, oh, I don't know what I'm fucking doing. But if I just belted, it would just naturally, I don't know what that's about, but some kind of, thing your body does,
right.
I guess.
Probably. So how many pre-Red Kate bands are we talking?
Well, so when I was in high school, so sometime about 85, 86, I was turning on the radio and playing around the end of the dial and came across this radio station, and I was like, what the fuck is playing? I don't know what this shit is. It's crazy. It was KJHK. And so I started listening to it. I'm like, what is this stuff? And so I started hearing about these shows going on and stuff like that at this place called the Outhouse. And I think there's been a newspaper story recently in the Lawrence Journal World. My parents got the paper, so there was some story about a car getting burned up or something. And so it made a little bit of news, and I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. What's going on? And so we'd been going, my friends and I was only 15, like we couldn't drive. I had an older friend who had a license, so he could drive at 16. And we would go to Lawrence and tool around and go play arcade games and go to a movie and get some pizza and try to sneak some beer somewhere.
Yeah.
You know, like which we knew that the Minsky's on Iowa usually would sell beer without carding you. You know, so we could get a pitcher of beer and some pizza, and that's all we did. You know,
guess who just became Minsky's greatest customer.
Yeah, and so. But we discovered that they had, you know, we started finding weirder movies. Liberty Hall had opened and the video store was there. So we go in. I remember being in there one day, and these guys telling us about this show that was going to happen, like that Friday
in Liberty,
you know, at the Outhouse.
Okay.
I'm like, okay, all right. Well, let's go fucking check this out. So me and a couple buddies went, and it was Fishbone and NOTA, and it fucking blew my mind.
Wow.
I'd never seen anything like this in my entire life. I had no idea this kind of thing existed.
Have you seen the
and
drama that they've been...
I just read a story about that just the other day, and I was like, oh, man, I had no idea this is all going on. Shit.
Posting screenshot. Like somebody's like,
crazy.
We're having a thing go on, and then whoever was causing the thing tried to make it look like it was that person.
Oh,
so
man.
Then he had to be like, I didn't want to bring receipts, but...
Oh, shit.
It's like, yo,
man.
everybody can see this, right?
Damn.
Anyway, sorry.
So, yeah, so that was it. That show sort of that was it. I was done. I was done with classic rock. I was done with anything I'd been doing before. I started trying to figure out like how I was going to cut my hair weird, and I was looking what other people were wearing. I started going to every show that they had at the Outhouse I could get to. I was going on weeknights. I could drive by then, you know, and so I was going to everything. I had no idea what I was seeing. I saw bands that I don't remember because I didn't know what they were. I was listening to KJHK. I didn't know what I was listening to because, you know, it's college station. They'll play 20 songs in a row and then come and tell you what the songs were. You're like, motherfucker, you just played 20 songs.
Yeah. Tell me
I don't know who was who. I don't know.
Every 4 songs, not every 20.
I was like, I would call them up and like sometimes, and they wouldn't answer the phone half the time. You know, I'm like, come on, who are you playing right now? Like, and stuff. So, that's what changed it all. And then from that point on, that's all I was into. I was like, I got to figure out what's going on with this. And so at some point I answered an ad. Some guy was looking for a band, and I answered an ad. It was a grad student and his girlfriend, and they lived in this apartment south of 23rd Street. And he was a big Greg Ginn Black Flag fan, and I barely knew who that even was. But so he was like a weird guitar player guy, and she was like a self-taught drummer, and we would practice in his bedroom in their apartment. And I did that for 7 or 8 months. We played one show at the Crossing once.
Was it well attended?
Not really. and we first initially we were called Graffiti, and then he changed the name to, which I thought was a kind of a cool name. Then he changed it to Allegory, which I'm like, oh man, this is kind of a dumb name. But like we did this for a while, but you know and we'll get to this because one of the I write about my high school graduation, which is where my high school graduation money is when I went straight to what was the leather place in Topeka? Was it Helmer's?
Yeah, maybe.
I think it was something like that. Bought my first leather jacket.
Okay.
I'd already spotted it a few months earlier, and then I was like, I'm gonna get my graduation money. Go down and buy me a leather jacket. But they gave me Nevermind the Bullocks and the Clash Just Give Them Enough Rope on cassette for a graduation present. Nice. And I was just like, fucking A. So you said you like punk rock? You gotta have these records. These are essential. I'm like, okay. And that was that's and then a little bit after that, I went to school. I was already in school, KU in like 87. I think it was 87 or 88. I think it was my maybe later my late freshman year. Actually, it was so 87, maybe early 88, and I knew this guy, Gil Bavell from the Outhouse. He used to go around selling stickers and stuff. And he was a drummer, and it was in a bunch of local bands. And he was talking to me at a party and said, I said something about wanting to play. And he said something, he said, the band I'm in, our bass player's leaving town. Do you want to come over and try out? I'm like, fuck yeah. And it was Jay Hopley from the Micronauts. It was a band called 2 Mile Death Plunge, and he was his band after the Micronauts.
Okay.
And that was my first real band. And we played a show probably like 6 weeks later. They had a show at the Record Bar. And I still have, I think I have in my old P-Bass case, I have like I kept it, like I had written notes out, like the chords and stuff to the songs. Like my set list had all these chords just so I could like keep play along and not fuck it up, you know? And that was the first, that was like a, real stage.
At Record Bar?
Not Record Bar. Oh. Shit. I'm sorry. Bottleneck.
Oh.
Bottleneck.
Oh.
Yeah. I don't know why. I think there's something about the old Record Bar reminds me of Bottleneck. And so I constantly switch them around when I'm talking just off the top of my head.
The old Record Bar. Have they changed location?
Yeah. The one that used to be over on the next to Ace Hardware in the Westport.
Oh, yeah.
That one.
Yes.
I think it was called the Wood, because it had like a wood floor, didn't it? And so just like Bottleneck does. So I think that's for some reason, and just no, it was the Bottleneck in Lawrence was our first show, and so yeah, that was that band, and that band lasted for a couple of years, and then did Wayback Machine, which was Scott Sperry, who had been in Second Chance, which is a hardcore band from Kansas City.
Okay.
And he had left that band, and he's probably my second oldest, longest friend. And we decided to get a band together, and we got Gil the drum, because 2 Mile Death Plunge had ended. And then we had Sean Lang singing initially for us. And we were like a, kind of not post-punk in the sense that post-punk means now, but like at the time, somewhat hardcore, but more of a, not quite as fast, not quite as punk rock band, more rock punk band kind of thing. It's kind of the same stuff I'm doing now, honestly. It's kind of very similar stuff. Yeah. And we did that band for a couple of years, and Sean left, and then Steph Weaver became our singer for a couple of years, and we played a lot of shows at the Outhouse and played with Green Day and Rancid and
Fun.
All and MDC and Sloppy Seconds and just all that, and it was good. It was, that whole scene was so, none of us realized at the time what we had. It was all being run by kids.
This is early, mid 90s?
Late 80s to early 90s.
Okay.
So yeah, it was just, these were, and I was late to that scene. Outhouse had been around for like 3 years, I think, before I went to my first show. I was 86, I think, was that Fishbone show I went to.
Okay.
But I just realized that like the oldest person I knew was Jay Hopley, and he was 10 years older than me. I thought he was an old man.
Right.
I thought he was just like, like it was just everything out there. The people running the show, people running the sound, the people in the door, the promoters. Most of the bands that were playing there were all under 25.
Wow.
It was just a bunch of kids. And
That's cool, though.
which explains why it was also such a mess, why there were
Yeah.
fights all the time. And it was just chaos, but it was, and I didn't realize like that other cities didn't have this. And it wasn't until I went out to other towns, started going, like I'd leave town, go on vacation, somewhere, went to Chicago or go check out some friends we knew in Minneapolis or when I moved to the West Coast, like, oh, having an all ages venue is really hard to do. The cops constantly are shutting them down, and we weren't ever, the cops showed up to the Outhouse like twice, like 2 or 3 times I can remember in the whole years I was going out there. And they just pull up, be there for a few minutes and then leave. Nobody ever fucked with us.
Nice.
We could just drink beer. It was not only that. We had an all-ages place that you could fucking drink beer at. Sometimes in the show. Now, I remember times that like there was periods of time like, no beer inside the venue, but you could stand in the parking lot and drink beer.
Right.
Which is what you did most of the time. There's probably I probably missed as many shows drinking beer in the parking lot as I saw, But it was just wild. It was a unique, and it wasn't like the only place in the country that was like that, but there were very few that were that wide open, and there were no bosses. There was no bosses, there were no parents, there were no cops. Yeah. It was just, we get to do it ourselves, man. It was cool. Man, none of us, I think, had any idea what we had until it was gone. I'm like, oh, fuck. Wow.
Old Cinderella, don't know what you got.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, then that was it. I moved to California in 94. I started a band out there called Snubnose, and we did that for a decade. The whole time I was out there, like a decade.
Okay.
And it was a 3-piece, kind of again punk rocker. Did a little more psychobilly stuff. We had a guitar player who was really good at, he liked doing. We did instrumentals and stuff like that. So we were kind of punk psychobilly band, and then when I came back to Kansas City in 2006, my friend Scott, who had been in Wayback Machine, he'd moved back from Chicago. And so he was actually the first guitar player in Red Kate. It was Scott, Andy, and I.
Okay.
We were a 3-piece. And then Brad joined a few months later, and Scott played with us until the first record, right before the first record came out, when he quit. And that's when Dez joined. And then Dez played with us till right before pandemic.
Okay.
And then it's been a couple of guitar players since then.
Right.
But Brad was in the band until after Un-American Activities came out. Brad stayed in the band for about 8 or 9 years. And then Sean Hammondtree came in and replaced him after that. So this album that we just put out is the first record that Sean's really played most of the rhythm guitar on the whole album. He was not on Un-American Activities. He's on a couple of singles we did. And then but this record has got some old stuff, and it's got like the only guitar player that's not on this record is Scott, because he had been gone long enough. But Dez is on it, Chris Kinsley's on it, Sean Hammondtree's on it. There's a couple of songs that Brad actually still played on, because we had a couple that were outtakes from sessions from 7-8 years ago. We're like, hey, let's use it.
Yeah.
Let's remaster, let's remix it. We recorded Dwayne Trowers with him every time, so it's it's consistent.
Yeah.
We had to work. Dwayne had to do some work to get him to sound like it's one session.
Yeah.
But there's stuff that's 7 years old on that album that we recorded. When we were recording the split 7-inch with Stiff Middle Fingers. So it's that old.
Gotcha.
But it.
Well, Chris, he. Two things. When his episode came out, he posted about it on Facebook, and at the all the way down to the very end, just took a jab at being shaved head guy. Great guy, great fun, great hair. And I was like, what the fuck, man? Like, and then
that's Chris, man.
In the comments, I think you were like, somebody was like, I think it was you, because it was like, oh, cool. I'm doing that later this month. Shit, I should look that up.
Yeah. I was like, what is this? I've never heard of this thing.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
I was like, oh, Dan Jones did it. Oh, man, Steve Tolbonta. What the hell?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, Chris likes to bust balls. That's that whole military background.
Uh-huh.
That was something. It was when he was in the band. When he was in the band with it was just something he had to get used to. It was just like, oh my God, I'm not used to somebody just constantly just fucking with you.
Yeah.
The guy is just like, all right. There's, if you don't know it, if you're not used to it, at first you're like, what the fuck? Come on. Then you realize that's.
Well, it's just.
So yeah, the nice hair. That's funny.
I've been. Let's see. 2013. So maybe 11 years I've been. Yeah. And it started. Somebody. Back when you would go get your pictures developed, and then you look at them, and somebody took a picture at Christmas from behind the couch that I was sitting in, and I was like, "Who's got the fucking bald spot right there?" And somebody was like,
"Who, son?
That's you." So I next time I'm in the barber chair, I'm like, "How long has that been happening?" And he was like, "Oh, a long time." I was like, "Why didn't you tell me?" He's like, "You didn't know?" I was like, "How would I ever see that? Yeah. I would never." So then, 20 years of running kitchens and work, I'm ball cap out of the shower, and then get a corporate job. And I was like, all right, I figured. And so if I didn't, my hair was thin. It was just a thin hair to begin with, like all my life. And if it was just straight down, then like a lot of skull visible right here. And so I would comb it, not a comb over. I just would from the cowlick comb it, and it was like perfect unless any hairs moved. So then I'm like putting a little bit of gel in there, and that was okay, but it also would shift. And then I was like, fuck this. So I started with an attachment, and then went down to all the way down to no attachments, and then shifted to just like a mustache and sideburn trimmer for my whole thing.
Yeah.
And then like one day, one of my kids came in the bathroom and like set something on that razor, and I thought I had like left it wherever I had been out of town. I was like, shit, I guess I have no choice but to bick.
Yeah.
So I started bicking, and then like a day, I was like, oh, it's right here. I have never gone back.
I can't use a bic. I react to it. Like it just, I can't. So I have to use an electric razor.
Yeah. But point being, 10 years, across almost all 10 years of this corporate sales job, that's okay for people to rib you about, like old, young, male, female, and they all think they're the first ones and that it's hilarious.
Dude.
And I'm always like, were you up late writing that one, that original piece? And they're like, oh, does that hurt your feelings? And I'm like, no, I just feel bad for you because it's not funny the 175th time. Also, what other part of the body is just green light across the board for people to be like, ha ha?
That's right.
And it's
we should be a protected class.
Chris, the arson class, Chris's episode came together very last minute, and we squeezed it in, and then I turn around and get it out. And it was like, most of the time when I open the front door, I have not met the person. Most of the time I was like, you were a perfect stranger 1 week ago, and you're like, it's so weird to me. And also, like I said, 100% of those people think it is comedy gold.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Like,
dude, I when I was in Sacramento, I won't get too long into the story, but I had this dude. He ended up dating a girl I had dated, and then he was fucking weirdo anyway. And I never fucking talked to him and never left him alone. But he went after me one time at a bar, and he was all drunk. So his buddies, his friends, I'm like, dude, like, why? You're with her now. Like, I don't know what your problem is with me. I don't give a fuck. And but he's like making fun. He's like saying shit about me being bald. I can't remember. What was he fucking saying? I can't remember. I was just like, what? Do you think I don't know that?
Yeah.
I was shaving my head for fucking, at that point, like 15 years already. I mean, like, oh, you really got me. Dang. It was like, and he was just talking, I was just like, kind of like, everybody's just kind of standing outside the bar, we're just laughing. I'm just like, what the fuck, dude? Like, that's all you got?
Like,
that's all you got?
How in this huge universe of PC and body positivity, like all of the thing, the energy at like body shaming and like that just didn't get included. And I don't give a fuck, but it's funny to me.
I never even occurred to me. You're right. It hasn't. It's funny. I guess it's never really bothered me because I've known shit since I've been shaving my own hair, cutting my own hair since the 80s. So when I still had hair, I had a mohawk.
Yeah.
And so when that started, I was aware. I was not like you. I was not unaware that my hair was going, because I was constantly shaving my own head, and so I did drag it on longer than I should have started shaving completely like earlier. Like I could get it's just like I see pictures now and go like, why wasn't I shaving my head by like 96? Like, what the fuck is wrong with me?
I just can you, and this is always in the presence of, as my grandfather used to say, mixed company. And so can you imagine like being at a work meeting and a female walks in and you're like, bangs? Yeah. That's a choice. You would be fired so fucking fast. It's not even. Anyway, I appreciate you being here and sharing a list with me, and I'd just like to roll through them chronologically.
Yeah, can I?
Yeah, I got to.
All right,
so we're gonna roll through these chronologically, and so in doing so, we go to 1978, which your list featured 2 releases from. The first from July, Devo, Are We Not Men?
What was the other one from that year? You had one there for that year?
The Clash.
Okay.
Give them enough rope.
Gotcha.
Is there
right? Well, no, that's. I was going to go in the order in which I discovered them, which is almost that order, but not quite the same.
We can do
we can do
whatever.
that. So let's
wanna-
do because Devo actually, as early as they come later for me.
Okay.
A little bit, not too much.
Clash first.
No, AC/DC.
AC/DC? Okay.
Highway to Hell.
In the order you gave them to me.
Well, I don't know if I did them quite that order, but that's the order. So this is like if you talk about if you're going in chronological order for me, it's Highway to Hell.
Okay.
And it's maybe not even Highway to Hell, but I think Highway to Hell. It's because it's probably actually was Dirty Deeds, and then probably Back in Black because I was hearing that so much on the radio.
Yeah.
But to me, this is my favorite AC/DC record.
Really?
Because I know it's. I mean, the purists are like, oh, it's maybe overproduced. It's not as good as Powerage or TNT and all this stuff. It's like, but when you're a kid in Kansas and you can't get those records because they're Australian imports, and also I just think objectively it's the pinnacle of what Bon Scott era was doing.
Okay.
I mean, the Mutt Lange production is amazing on it.
Yeah.
I fucking love it. I mean, I think there's not a bad song on the whole record.
No.
It's a banger from top to bottom.
No shortage of innuendo either.
Yeah, the lyrics are just so incredibly stupid. They're just amazing. I mean, they're so. I can't even. It's hard to describe what they're because they're almost embarrassingly. It takes me back to being like being 14 years old and driving at the time my truck, and just being like full of hormones and have no idea what to do about any of it.
Right.
It's all it is. It's
Yeah.
just like and just frustrated teenage boy in a small town trying to fucking find some shitty ditch weed to smoke and it's like. But it's the guitar tones are so fantastic in it. I mean, from a musical standpoint, to me, once I got, it's the sound of the guitars are just perfect.
Yeah.
And
R.I.P. to Malcolm, by the way, right? He passed recently, didn't he?
Did he? Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean,
yeah.
I'd say recently it might have been a handful of years.
Because all shit runs together. I think it was a couple of years.
Right.
I think it was a couple of years.
Yeah.
Yeah. But so this is just because, I mean, I was into AC/DC before I knew what punk rock was.
Okay.
This is probably the most, I mean, the first records I ever got were mine was Billy Joel's Glass Houses.
Great record.
And Queen the Game.
Okay.
Because my cousin had the Billy Joel record and I'd heard it at his house. And Queen I wanted because I'd loved, Another One Bites the Dust.
Yeah.
Fucking love that song.
I mean, the bass line of all bass lines.
Baseline, exactly.
Skittle bam, bam,
And
bam.
so I got those for Christmas one year. And then the first record I ever bought with my own money was For Those About to Rock. The year it came out.
Okay.
Which is what, 81?
I think so. That's the Canon cover,
yeah,
right?
Yes, the Canon, yeah. So I still have that. And that was the first record I bought. It's not my favorite record. So that's why it's not on this list. But that's what got me into to Highway to Hell.
Okay.
We had this one shortly after that. When we and my buddy were doing the Columbia thing. Highway to Hell was one of the records that
I
we
was
got.
like, I got to know how, because I figured you owned it and at it probably at a young age and like, wow.
Yeah.
Because Back in Black has made somebody's list, and so has If You Want Blood, You've Got It. The live with the guitar coming through.
Yeah.
But Highway to Hell,
Yeah, to me it's because it's Bon Scott, which I prefer over Brian Johnson.
Sure.
Even though I think Back in Black is an awesome record, and Throws About to Rock is a really good record too. It's just it doesn't have the swagger that the Bon Scott stuff is just like, man, partying with these dudes must have been wild. Like
I'm the upper class high society.
Yeah, there's so much snark in it,
Yeah,
and tongue is
yeah,
firmly
yeah.
in the cheek through the whole thing. And so to me, I think I could have picked another one from earlier, but like I don't think any of them are as perfect a record as Highway to Hell.
It's pretty fucking perfect.
So yeah,
and also this is I'm not. Eventually, I think I owned all of the AC/DC records on cassette. But before I really created my library, it's just whatever FM radio was giving me.
Right.
And the title track here would get some play.
Oh, yeah.
And I just remember being like, what is that Angus is doing right there at the end where he kind of, as the song is closing. And okay, man, this guy's got chops. And then it's like, man, fucking everybody in this band has some chops. And,
And it's there's such a deceptive band because the songs are simple, but it's hard to do them.
Right.
Because the execution is immaculate. And it's when you try to play an AC/DC song, a lot of times the reason it doesn't like AC/DC is because you're not playing it simply enough, and it's really tricky as a musician I think to do AC/DC songs and make them sound good because they're deceptively simple.
Yeah.
And and to get the swing right and to get the groove right is really, really tough.
Have you seen the video for It's a Long Way to the Top in the parade?
Yeah, they're on the back of that is fantastic.
Just shredding. Fucking, I'm not missing.
Shit, man.
I don't have any. I don't know if that's actually captured a lot, but if it is, they didn't miss a fucking beat.
Yeah, all those things that have popped up on the internet in the last few, I love them. I'd never seen any of that stuff as a kid. I mean, you didn't see any of that stuff. You know, I did none of that. You know, hell, I didn't even know that there was. You know, I have 76 Jailbreak, which has some of those songs that are missing from the American versions of those early records. But I did not even know that there were these Australian versions you could get, and apparently they sound better. I'd like to find them. I've never even noticed I've come across them. Huh. There's guys out there who'll tell you like, oh man, you got to get the Australian version because it's got this mastered differently, et cetera, and
well,
whatever, all that. But yeah, I mean, and Girls Got Rhythm, I think it's just the best
backseat rhythm.
I love that fucking song. Man. I am not ashamed to say I love that fucking song.
I remember as a kid being like, what's that mean? And then like not too terribly long after, I was like, oh.
Wow. They're playing that on the radio?
Mm-hmm.
Now I know those looks my parents were giving me when I'm playing AC/DC in the basement.
Yeah.
They're like, what the...
Don't worry about the fact that he's got devil horns on the cover. It's the content that you should be worried about. So we are then going in the order of how you gave them to me? Because I would have the Clash next. Let's
see. That would probably be the Clash would be that Clash would be good. That would be the next one because that's like I said earlier. I got that record, that cassette actually from the guy who I was first in a band with, and he gave it to me for
the one that said you would. I know what you like, so you should check these two albums.
No. Oh. This is so that band Graffiti that I was in. We played the one show. The grad student. Greg Ginn guy, he gave me this cassette for a graduation present.
Oh, nice.
And I mean this is really the first, I think, punk rock record. I don't think I had, because the first punk rock record I ever bought was the Dead Kennedys, In God We Trust Incorporated. And I still remember buying it because I bought it because it was an EP. It was only $5.49.
Hell yeah.
And so if I figured if it sucked and I didn't like it, I've only out $5.
Yeah. Nothing like seeing the nice price sticker.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I think I got this record before that I think I had this before the Dead Kennedys record. It's one of those somewhere in there, but it's about the same time. But
well, Highway to Hell was 7 of 18 for them, 10 tracks, 41 minutes. This one is second of 6. 10 tracks, 36 minutes. London Calling has made some lists. Sandinista made one person's list. But this was a first and therefore a first listen for me.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And it's like, this doesn't sound anything like London Calling.
No,
not to me anyway.
And again, to me, so there's so in the Clash world, there's a lot of the folks who are like, no, it's the first record. Because that's the raw one. That's the punk.
Self-titled.
Yeah. That's the raw record. And plus there's a British version of that with different songs on it in different order.
Oh, okay.
And I agree. That's a great record as well. It bothers me that it's produced so poorly. As a bass player, I want to hear the bass. And
it's already
Paul Simonon is just killer on this fucking record. I mean, the bass playing on this record is amazing, and you can hear it, and it's just something. But when it caught my attention when I first heard it as a kid, was just Strummer's his urgency in his vocals. You know, the guy's just like, he is belting it out and he's singing about important shit, and he's like, "Fuck the man," and I was just like, as a kid who was even by the time I was and I was always into politics and stuff when I was a kid. So,
really?
Yeah.
Wild.
And so, excuse me. So here's a band singing about important shit. was like such a shocker. You know, I mean, that was why I was into Jello too, and then the Dead Kennedys was like, oh, they're singing about girls and cars and, you know, the stupid shit that AC/DC is singing about. They're singing about, you know, stuff that matters.
Yeah.
And again, and, you know, this theme kind of goes through this. It's a 2-guitar band, right? So you get this, you're hearing these 2 different guitar things going on the whole time. So, you know, so AC/DC, it's similar the same way. You got a rhythm guitar player and a lead guitar player. You got this back and forth going on between them. I just think that I think it's some of their best songs, but just, I think probably just because it's recorded a little is better than the first record is why I like it better. Okay. You know, but I think again, if you had to make me pick one of the two between the two, I'd say I'll pick that one.
Sure.
But I love the first record as well. I think London Calling is a fantastic record. Right. It's a different record. You can tell the band's becoming a different band.
Yeah.
You know, and actually, I think about this. I may have had Combat Rock before I got this because I love Should I Stay or Should I Go? I mean, that was the punkest thing I'd ever heard at the time because it was made a major hit, right?
Yeah.
And in the Rock the Casbah video, I'd seen a bunch of times. So I think I might have bought that cassette at some point. So then to hear this and be like, oh, this is what the Clash really sound like.
I mean,
was
it
like,
was
fuck.
Until I started this podcast, Casbah was all. I was like, Clash blows. Like, what is that? Fuck that.
It's a weird disco.
Yeah,
It was one of Mick Jones's weird disco tunes. Yeah.
And not that I don't like that tune for whatever, but I, you know, have been into music for as long as I can remember. And I, you know, probably didn't have a means for playing it in my room until I 6th grade, possibly 7th grade. And so however many years into listening to music on my own and building my own catalog, I got way deep before I realized I don't think that I ever hear the bass. And it sort of became like this, I had to really try. Now it's like, you know, but I think there is something to be said for just generally speaking production and where the bass was in the mix up until kind of recently.
It drives me crazy. There are so many records. And it's one of the things I don't like about a lot of modern big guitar rock production is that they layer all these guitars and the bass is just this tone that's underneath them all and you never hear it as a distinct instrument.
Right.
So you'll hear in all our mixes in my band, in Red Cape, or any band I've been in, it's like, that bass is going to be punchy. It's going to be
good.
It's going to be poking you in the fucking chest the whole time, you know, because it's there. And I don't like, and so, a lot of my, you know, some of my early influences and so that's one thing about AC/DC that kind of bothers me about a lot of those mixes, particularly on vinyl, because they made these really long records. And so they got to take the low end out to fit these 22-minute sides on a record.
What?
You know, For Those About to Rock is a fucking really long record.
Yeah.
And so when you have a record side that's more than like 19 minutes a side, you got to start either bringing the volume down on the cut or taking the low end out. And that's why those on vinyl can sound really, really thin.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Whoa.
Here's a great example. Grand Funk Railroad.
Yeah.
Some of the fattest, fucking just nastiest, gnarliest bass tones you can hear. But they got like, what's the name of that one record? It's like 54 minutes long.
Okay.
And so on vinyl, to me, it's just like, you gotta listen to the digital. I love it. Listen to the record on vinyl, I'm like, it's just thinned out because you can't fit that much signal.
I never in a million years would have thought that would be a thing. Mm-hmm. I figured I thought it was just 1,000% track running time and how many tracks.
Yeah, no, that's the thing about records is there's a physical limitation in what you can do with them.
Wow.
And so, that's just it. And that's one of the reasons. So there are certain records, especially from certain eras, where the bass isn't there strictly because it was made for a record. The whole thing, the end product was going to be a record. And then when they were reissued as CD initially, they didn't remaster them. So they basically just took that same master they made for the record and stuck it on vinyl on CD, and it sounded like terrible, you know. And then Then you get the remasters that come out later, and you're like, oh, there is a bass in this whole mix somewhere.
I mean, I feel like I've come all the way 180 degrees to, like, if the drums and bass aren't easily audible, like you're missing part of the skeleton of the thing.
It's where the groove is.
Thank you.
Yeah. It's where the groove. I mean, the drums provide the beat, and the bass provides the groove.
For sure.
And that's where you get the soul in a song. And if you don't have it, you're missing something. And it's and a lot of the big 90s alt rock stuff, to me, they started stacking the rectified guitars so high, and you had this wall of sound guitars, but the bass was just nothing more than a note, like a super low note under it all.
I've said this a bunch of times on here, but somebody very early, actually, one of the members of Shiner, did an episode, and just, when it started, this thing has evolved, and it's like, what's your all-time favorite record? Or maybe I said, one or two or two or three. He picked one record. And it was Goodbye Yellow Brick Road, Elton John.
Yeah.
And so, when I go to get ready for his episode, it's like, here's the track list. I mean, I know, 7, 8 of these, a long record.
Right.
I know a lot of these already, but it was the tracks that I didn't know, where I was like, who the fuck is playing bass and drums on this record? This thing is amazing.
Yeah.
And when he got here, he's like, yeah, they're like the best rhythm section of all time. I'm like, for Elton fucking John? That's nuts.
Yeah.
So let's see then. Throb next.
Okay, wait. I think that might be.
I'll just give the
next
whole stack to you, and
you can. Because I'm remembering. I did listen to all of these again.
Nice.
Just the last 2 days. I've listened to all these records so many times, but I'm like, I need to make sure I know what I'm talking about. Yeah, I think you're right. Actually, it goes this, and then probably, yeah. That's probably a good order.
Okay,
so,
cool.
Yeah. So, Naked Raygun, Throb.
Naked Rayguns, Throb, 1980. Well, I saw 84, and I also saw 85, so I wasn't sure.
Yeah, I think it's 84.
But it's first of 8 for them, 13 tracks, 33 minutes. Punk. So we've gone from Australia to the UK, and now we're punk rock from Chicago.
Yeah.
What's your discovery story for these guys and for this one?
So my freshman year of college, I meet this kid from Cleveland, Akron, Ohio, punk rock guy. And he really got me into much more into the British oi punk and stuff. And he was a big Naked Raygun fan. And he had this Naked Raygun tape, and we played the shit out. I'm like, oh, this is amazing. Because by that point, I'd been to enough shows. I was already starting to notice that there's a certain feel to a lot of these punk rock bands that were still around, And it's just it was hard to find. And I was slow to buy records. So I didn't have a lot of money, right?
Yeah.
And so it's you go into the store and you're like, am I going to spend all this money on a record I don't really know? And so I was just trying to hear things that other people had, and they were one of those who was like, oh, I think I like every song on this record. I'm going to get this record, And then I think I got the CD first. I got the record a little bit later. But because it doesn't sound like every other punk rock band. No. It doesn't sound like any punk rock band I know of. I mean, it gets fast, but still slower than the hard. It's not hardcore. And there's this jazziness. The bass playing's awesome in it. The bass tones and all Naked Raygun records. I mean, this is their first album. It's the first one I ever heard. I could easily put in All Rise, which is their second record. It's got full of great songs. But it's always the bass. The bass tone's just punchy and fat. And, there's the swing, the drummer, the swinging that is going on in the drums is just amazing to me.
What does that mean, swinging?
Well, there's some high, on Rat Patrol, and I think it's Gear. There's hi-hat work he's doing that makes a song that has just nothing but 2 or 3 chords in it just take up and just take off.
Oh, okay, cool.
Because he's just doing these little hiccups with the snare drum and the hi-hat, just and just in a punk rock band.
Nice.
And it just, to me, makes the stuff just sort of have this energy that it wouldn't otherwise have.
Okay.
If you put a regular beat on that, it's just going to be a kind of a boring song. And I also really like the guitar. The guitar tones are super. There's a lot of heavy reverb, metallic reverb effect on them that gives them this big sort of sci-fi apocalyptic sort of feel.
Yeah.
It kind of reminded me of like Godzilla tones,
Yeah.
and like there's just this, there's these, it's a guitar sound that nobody else was doing either.
No, and it may where I don't have the musician ear that you do, but where I go with it is like, oh, there's something happening with the production level of this record because it's got a sound that is not one you would lump in with a lot of their counterparts.
Yeah, and they being from the Midwest, they we were dominated by the Southern California and some San Francisco sound and the New York sound. And so to have a band, Chicago always had its own different thing going on. Peg Boy comes out of Naked Raygun, which is probably another record I could have put on here in my list. And then you got Effigies, and then you even got all the wax track stuff that comes out of Chicago, which I'm still not really into that stuff, but it has that. These guys all came out of the same scene,
right?
And some of those guys are Steve Albini's out of Chicago.
R.I.P. in peace.
Yeah, and so all the Santiago Durango, who wrote Managua and New Dreams, which is on the second record, he's in Big Black. I mean, he's playing on Kerosene. I think.
Oh,
same bass player. Pretty certain.
Okay.
Don't quote me on that, but I think that's. So I just think it just, and again, what they're singing about, it's like, now here it's like, it's somewhat political, but not really. You have to read between the lines to get it, because they're singing about, one, Rat Patrol is about the old TV show, but he's singing about Nazis, so that's somewhat political because this old World War II show, Rat Patrol. And then, but it's also just like post-apocalyptic sort of songs. And that into my whole sort of nihilistic sort of mindset at the time, and I still think like Only in America and I Don't Know or something. Two of my favorite songs.
Nice.
I mean, and then to me the best one-part song I've ever heard still is Managua.
Okay.
And it's one chord progression, and it's gee whiz, pretty pretty boys, onward to Managua. And this is all, coming out while we're in Nicaragua, and we're funneling money to the Contras. Reagan's selling arms for hostages and all that shit to funnel the money to the Contras, and they come with a song called Managua, and it's just one line: "Pretty pretty boys, onward to Managua." And that, to me, that was beautifully simple.
Yeah.
And that was like the simplicity of AC/DC lyrics merged with some politics, and you've got like this like. Yeah, that's art, right?
Yeah,
and also minimalism, but
as
you're
the
still
kids
saying
would
something.
say, punk AF, right?
Yeah.
That's cool. So how did you wind up interested in politics as a young person?
I don't know. I mean, I remember I'd be watching the news when I was a kid. I was watching TV when Reagan got shot. I was watching the coverage on it. I mean, I think probably had a lot to do with the hostage situation in Iran, 79. I remember staying up late watching Nightline, I didn't like Reagan when I was a kid, and my family didn't like Reagan. My family talked about politics a lot.
What was their Jimmy Carter take?
I think, I don't really recall anything specific, but my guess is they liked Jimmy Carter. My guess is they voted for. I'm sure they voted for him because my family they were union people. Sure, there are a lot of union folks in my family, and teachers, and like Teamsters.
Okay.
And stuff, and so
I ask only because it continues to blow my mind, and he seems like one of the most amazing humans to walk the earth in our lifetime, and you can barely get all the syllables in his name out before people are ready to talk shit on what a worst president of all time. I'm like, based on what?
Ignorance.
How is that an easy job for anybody?
Anybody who says that, my guess is the next words out of their mouth is Ronald Reagan was the greatest.
1,000%.
And then I'm just like, okay, I'm done talking to you because you're a fucking moron.
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't know what the fuck you're talking about.
So are you still a news person?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
And how do you consume it?
I mean, for the most part, I listen to NPR pretty much all day long while I'm working. I just have it on. That kind of keeps me on the basics of what's happening. And then when I have the time, I try to go out and read a few different blogs. There's one that it's about 6 months before every election. There's one called electoralvote.com. I'll start reading. It's by a couple of expat. One's an expat, computer science guy, and the other, his partner is he's a history professor at UCLA. And they write this blog that's very minimal. There's no advertising. It just text and their take on, and they just read they consume a shit ton of news stuff and then kind of give you a digestion of like, here's the arguments that are going on from both sides, what's happening. Here's how we see what's really going on. Here's an analysis. And it's spot on brilliant. And the reason I first started watching is because what they were doing was they started the thing to just track the polling data by state, which is what actually matters in a presidential election. Not the national, it's 52-48, national. Who gives a shit? Because we know what Kansas is going to vote. We know how Nebraska is going to vote. We know, what's the state by state and what's that mean electorally? And so that's what they started doing was track, and then they track they do very good scientific analysis of the polls, and they don't way better than 538.
Nate Silver.
Yeah.
Okay.
And all the data's there. They lay it out and they show you how it's going on. And then they just give you an assessment of what's going on, and it's real straight. And they got good tongue. They're pretty tongue in cheek about a lot of things. There's some humor in it, which is fun. Yeah, I started checking that about. I need to start reading that now again to get caught up on where we're at and what's really going on. Because you only get so much detail. These guys will go into enormous detail because they're reading probably about anything they write about. They've probably read no less than 10 to 15 different takes on it to get like all of the backstories. You can get into like they'll go into like what was going on with Joe Manchin all during the last session where he was holding up all those bills that Biden was trying to push through with and like what was he trying to negotiate for? It's almost tedious. Like if you had to really be a political junkie to get into this, but it's also at the same time you're like, oh, I see. So somebody's leveraging this guy over here, and this guy's reacting to this, and now they're trying. Of course, they never did figure out what was going on with what's her name in Arizona. Like Manchin, you could sort of understand like where he was being pulled, but who's the one from Arizona that became an independent? Oh shit! She was the one that hung up all that stuff.
I'm not the one to ask.
Damn, I forget her name now. Oh, I can't believe it. But she's not really that important right now because they don't have a 50-50 split in the Senate anymore. But she had, because she had gotten elected ran as a Green and got elected as a really liberal in Arizona. And then she just basically Wall Street bought her off over the last several years. And Kristen Sinema.
Okay.
And she was responsible for hanging up a ton of shit in Biden's first legislative session, things he was trying to do. So a lot of the things that people are pissed off about Biden not getting done, Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema are the reasons those two things didn't get done. Because those are two votes in the Senate that kept
I would argue
a ton of shit
an
getting done.
Insane majority of the people don't know that's how that.
They don't know. They don't know anything. That's the problem. I mean, we can go on for hours about that shit.
Yeah, this is this pairing, if you will, of NPR and then reading that blog or multiple blogs is appealing to me. But I think a lot of folks, 10 o'clock news, and then they shut it off, and they honestly, and I'm not trying to talk shit, I think that they honestly walk around thinking that they're informed.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's difficult. I mean, people are busy.
Yes.
They don't have the energy to take all this shit in. It's complicated.
It is.
Our educational system is not that great. A lot of people don't really understand the basics of how our government even works. I mean, they think the president's responsible for inflation. I mean, it just doesn't, they think gas prices go up. Oh, that's Joe Biden's fault.
Yeah.
No, there's a complex market system of oil.
multiple people saying that in between election and when he took office. Just you wait. Yeah. Gas prices are going to go up, so make sure you thank Biden when you're at the pump. It's like, what? What are you talking about, man?
Well, I mean, people don't remember 6 months into a new administration who's responsible for what.
Well, it's cloudy.
Yeah, all of a sudden they've forgotten that thing you're talking about happened under the old guy.
Yeah.
That thing happened under that wasn't.
Yeah.
It just doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It just doesn't matter. It's just we're in a and now you throw the disinformation. The people are actively trying to lie to you.
That shit's scary.
And you don't know what is truth anymore and what's not. So then you end up with the next one, which is awesome because I think that's the next band's all about is absurdity.
So okay, Devo.
Yeah, it's the perfect segue into Devo.
July
the evolution, man.
78. Are We Not Men? Their debut, first of 9, 11 tracks, 34 minutes. Speaking of Akron, new wave out of Akron, Ohio. I thought it was very nice of Tom Brady to pose for the album cover art here.
Do you know this? We'll get into that story.
So only the second Devo record to make a list. Steve Tulipana from episode 84 had Duty Now for the Future.
Yeah, Duty Now. Yeah, I saw that.
Who is Devo and why are they an important piece of the American music fabric?
Devo captured the absurdity of all the shit we just been talking about.
Okay.
50 years ago. I mean, those guys come out in like 74, 75, they start playing. And I mean, they're making fun of this stuff. They're serious about it. They're aware of all the hypocrisy and the absurdity. And they're just like holding this mirror back up, this like funhouse mirror back to society. To me, that's what this is. I mean, Devo,
sure.
It is like, I mean, that song, it's not on this record, but it's a beautiful world. It's a beautiful world we live in. And it sounds like it's a happy song unless you listen to the lyrics. And you're like, oh, it's not the last line, it's a beautiful world for you, not me. You don't catch that till the very end. But that isn't, that's like, everybody playing Born in the USA like some patriotic anthem. Are you listening to the song? No.
Kind of brutal.
Yeah. And Devo is like, that's what they're making these happy songs that are all about awful things. Or like this album, I think it's their debut record. It's just to me, I mean, what caught my attention as a kid, I remember hearing Satisfaction, their version, which is just so fucked up. Like what is going on with that drum beat and the time signature?
Yeah.
And it's just like, it's so deconstructed and upside down. Because we all knew that song growing up. You can't miss it. You all know that song.
It wasn't too terribly old by the time they covered it, right?
No, it's like 14 years. So
is it that much?
Because Satisfaction is what, 64?
Is it from the Okay.
Stones 64, 65 is when Satisfaction comes. That's like the Stones' like first breakout hit, I think.
But not a lot of folks were covering shit for a record.
No.
Back in,
and then, and that's the kind of irreverence there was. Like, hey man, we're just. What's funny when you read about the band, they actually wanted to be signed and popular, but nobody knew what to do with them. The record labels didn't know what to do with them. So they just got called New Wave, and they weren't really part of the New Wave scene. They weren't in New York. They weren't part of that thing. They were just doing their weird ass shit, developing their whole theory of de-evolution. And, it goes into the whole it ties into the Church of Subgenius and that kind of absurdity of like, L. Ron Hubbard, L. Ron Drunkard, that's partly why,
Hoover.
Ron Hoover, Frank Zappa. I mean, it's, but I mean, I think, but the song Gut Feeling has to me, the best line still, I think, a single line of a song I've ever heard. And it's the opening line. It's this big, long build up in this song. And you're like, it's just, they just keep playing this chord progression over and over and over again. And it's like, and he comes in with something about the way you taste makes me want to clear my throat. And I'm just like, oh, I mean, that's just brutal. What a brutal fucking insult. And it's just
that's that unmistakable sound of a crushing a baseball with a wooden bat.
Yeah, it's just like, ooh, there it is. And that's, and then there's like songs like Mongoloid, which is just weird. It's like, and he's thinking about suburban guy, goes to work, comes home, he's a Mongoloid, whatever. And, but at that point I was sort of aware of the whole suburban conformity of the suburbs. I hated it. I hated going. We'd go to Johnson County to go to the shopping mall. And I was just like, God, what is up with this fucking whole part of the world? It's just this beige after beige after beige building and strip malls and monotony and chain restaurants and and so I think I'd heard of course Whip It on the radio and and on TV the video, and then I'd heard Working in a Coal Mine. I still remember the first time I heard that at my cousin's house on the radio. So I don't really know when this record. I think this record is probably when I meet Gil, who I was in 2 Mile Death Plunge with, and he's a big Devo freak, and I think that's when I sort of discovered Devo.
Okay.
Like really started getting into Devo.
Were you going to say something about the album cover art?
Oh yeah, so I just caught this like maybe 6 months ago. I did not. So that's supposed to be a picture of Chichi Rodriguez. Chichi Rodriguez,
Golf
the golf pro.
Okay. Really?
And it says there's a video you can find online where they go through the whole story of how they wanted to use his picture, but I think they were going to do it for the cover, and then legal's like, no, we can't use his picture. And they'd had it laying around or something, like, oh, this would be great for the cover, we'll use it. And so then legal discovers they're going to use it, and they say no, and it's like it's getting too late. They got to do something, and so somebody goes and they have some art people doctor it up, and it turns into this, and I can't repeat the whole story because I don't remember all the details.
Yeah.
But it's a funny story because they actually, the whole point of the video is that they're going to deliver. Because they get his permission at the time to do it, and it never actually happens, and they never meet him. And then, so they eventually, this is the first time they meet and present him with this record, and then an original version that they were going to use, which is his picture. And they have the whole, I didn't know Chichi Rodriguez was still alive. And, which also then brings me up to that WKRP episode where Les Nessman's doing the news and he calls him Chai Chai Rodriguez, which is what I almost said when we started talking about this, because like, how do you say Rodriguez? Yeah. No, it's not that. That's fucking Les Nessman. But,
it does look like Tom Brady, though, doesn't
it? Does, yeah. I never put that, but you're right. Yeah, it's funny. They show the original one that they had, they were going to use, and then they have, the studio made him do that, label made him do this, and anyway.
So what did they give to Chichi Rodriguez? I
think they gave him maybe a version with the original picture they wanted to use.
Because if it's that, he was probably like,
yeah,
really?
I'd have to go because they changed the hat, I think.
Okay.
And then they like airbrushed the face a bunch and stuff. But yeah, but
that's funny.
Yeah, they had some. It was a picture from some golf balls or some advertising thing, So.
So strangely, like I mentioned, Steve Tulipon had a Devo record on his list. Our next stop, Candy Apple Grey, Hüsker Dü, 1986, fifth of only 6 for them, 10 tracks, 37 minutes, and this is from punk rock in Chicago to punk rock in Minnesota. Dan Jones of the Squids, episode 92, had Zen Arcade
I saw that.
on his list, but Candy Apple Grey for you. So now I've listened to 2 Hüsker Dü records, one time a piece, and to me, they feel like insanely underappreciated. Has that always been the case for them?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, they were, well, so
there's a lot to, I didn't dislike Zener, but there's a lot to like on this.
Yeah, this is their big breakout record. Okay. This is their, what label did they get? This is their major label record. I can't remember what it's on. But this is their breakout record. And it's the reason I picked this one is it's not probably, Zen Arcade probably is my favorite. Well, Flip Your Wig might actually be my favorite. Warner, yeah. But this is the first one I heard. Okay. And so this is why I picked it, because it's what got me into Hüsker Dü.
Okay.
And yeah, the Hüsker fans that were, because they were, they started early 80s, so most of those guys that people were into them early on were 4 or 5 years older than me. And so I didn't know who they were, really. I started hearing this song, played at some parties and stuff. I hear, I Don't Want to Know If You're Lonely, which is on KJHK. And I'm like, man, what a great song. It's a pop song, but it's still noisy as fuck. It's still punk rock, but it's a pop song, clearly a pop love song kind of thing, or anti-love song or breakup song, or whatever you want to call it. And so I got the record and just was like, there's something about his voice. Well, Grant Hart's, because that's a Grant Hart song, actually. So between Bob Mould and Grant Hart, like the whole thing is just kind of crazy, and it just got this fuzz to it that feels like static running through your head all the time. And I was, me and a couple of friends of mine were both really into Hüsker Du, and it was just, to me, it was always like, this is just sort of, we would come home from the bars and, and we wouldn't stay up drinking and smoking weed and stuff. And it was like, put on the Hüsker Du and just this fuzz, just kind of, it felt like sometimes what the noise in my head was like at that time a lot, it just triggered, it locked into that sort of just all this energy and angst and just like, it's just like this electrical buzz kind of thing. And that's what these guitar tones to me sound like. And then from there I got to Zen Arcade and then Flip Your Wig and Warehouse Songs and Stories. A lot of people don't give that a lot of credit, but that came out after this. It's a 2 record. I think it's great songs on it. Just incredible pop songs on there. And, but yeah, the older guys, they're all going to be like, no, it's got to be Zen Arcade or Metal Circus or one of those, because this is their big breakout major label record. But to me, I just think, it's definitely it's a moodier record. It's sad songs, a lot of sad songs, a lot of breakup songs on it.
It seems, correct me if I'm wrong, it seems to go more places than Zen Arcade does.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd always heard this rumor, and I don't think it's true, but I remember at the time hearing this rumor, like that this was the breakup, like that Bob and Grant were breaking up, and this is the album they wrote. And I don't think they ever dated each other. But at the time, I remember hearing this, like I thought, and it was like a weird thing to me. It was like, for one, it was like, oh, that's kind of crazy. You're singing, songs about each other on the same record.
What are you guys, Fleetwood Mac?
Yeah, exactly. But I don't think it turns out that was what was going on at all. But then also that, like, because I think I might have maybe heard this for like right when I was going through a breakup or something, and so it was like it hit a spot,
Yep.
and also too, like I was probably 18 when I heard this, and it's like, oh, Bob Mould's gay.
He is?
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I was like, oh, I didn't know that at the time. I was like, oh, okay, and then I'm like, oh, and they're fucking singing all these like punk rock songs, but they're also singing heartbreak. Like, and I didn't, I knew like no gay people at all at that point, right? Yeah. And so it was like a real like sort of like, oh yeah, gay people just like us, just like straight people. Okay, it was like it was like a sort of it was like an opening. It was a window to me to like a bigger issues. It was like, oh, okay, because to me it was just like gay people were just like foreign. I didn't know. I don't think I probably did and just didn't know.
Right.
But growing up in a small little town, like I didn't, they were just foreign. This thing you heard about, and I didn't know.
They all live somewhere else.
Yeah, and I don't know what they're like, and I don't know what what's going on. But then they're like, oh, or if you knew somebody, they were real flamboyant. I mean, I knew one guy in college he was obviously gay. He was very flamboyant. And I was like, oh, that's what then you're like, oh, that's not what all gay people are like at all.
Right.
It's just a bunch of white guys from the Midwest, just singing like.
Well, it was really odd. I was talking about this on an episode not too long ago. But if you look at Rock Hudson, Liberace, Freddie Mercury, Elton John, it's like all along the way. It's like we all nobody gave us any information, but we all were like, that seems gay. But as far as that, the world was like, no, they just dress. And then years go by, and it's like, they're all, and it's like, well, why didn't we just say?
And not until some of them start, some people, rock age, and you're like, oh, and then you realize, oh, these guys were all in the closet, and I had no idea about that. I knew nothing about
like their whole lives.
And I'm like, fuck, so then I'm just like, man, how fucking punk rock is it to just be like, yeah, I'm out, and I'm in a fucking punk rock band, and what do you, I was like, that was just to me, it was like, fuck yeah, man.
I've not crossed paths with a ton of Hüsker Du fans, but I feel like 100% of them also really love solo Bob Mould stuff.
Oh, I do too.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I wore out my copies of Workbook and Black Sheets of Rain when those came out. I've bought every solo record he's ever done. I've got every Sugar. I got the Sugar stuff. I have his new stuff he's doing now with his current lineup. I just wish he'd play in Kansas City more. He just doesn't play here much, and I mean, it's weird. Not
uncommon.
I know.
Your so-and-so's tour dates are out, and it's like Denver, St. Louis. Like, damn, man, what is the deal?
I don't know.
Some people had some bad experiences and word got out, and some people just don't.
Sometimes that's it. There is some rumor out there that Hüsker had a bad time in Kansas City once a long time ago, and that's why he doesn't really come back. But like, he played in that set of records that started coming out about 10 years ago with his new lineup. He played The Bottleneck, but on the second leg of the tour. So he did the U.S., then he came back on a second run and played The Bottleneck, and then he did another tour and skipped the whole area, and then he came back. Maybe in 2016 or so, and he played at Grinders.
Oh.
And that's the last time he's played here, as far as I know.
Damn.
And it was a cool night because the first band got rained out, and we thought the whole thing was going to get canceled.
Right.
And there's just these people, we're all just standing around huddling under the little things we could find out in the Grinders back patio to stand under.
Yeah.
And so we're all just standing talking to people, and it's like, it's funny. It's a bunch of like middle-aged bald dudes. I'm like, yeah, this is a Bob Mould show. And me and my buddy Scott are there, and so we start talking to people, and we stood there for like an hour, and they're gonna have to call the whole thing. So it only has to be over by 11. And finally, the rain stops, and we start noticing they're moving some stuff on stage. Like, hey, I think they're gonna do it. They're uncovering stuff. Sure enough, clouds open up, moon comes out, and they just rip it for like 50 minutes.
Cool.
And everybody stayed, and it was amazing. And everybody was crammed up to the front, and they just ripped it, and it was fucking awesome. I still remember that show forever.
Was there anybody on the bill after them?
No, the opening band was supposed to play, and they got canceled. That was it.
Every once in a while, I'll have this experience where somebody just really rips it, but it's your experience when you're in there, and then when you're kind of maybe a little bit curious, is you can see the people immediately around you, but is everybody really feeling what I'm? And then you walk out and the vibe is palpable.
Oh,
like everybody's like, "Fuck, they just killed that."
No, everybody was just. It was one of those things where everybody there was all having this sort of shared experience thing. It was nice. It was pretty cool. It was pretty cool, man.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so Devo, The Clash, AC/DC, Hüsker Du. I think Naked Raygun is the only artist from your list who has not had a record on anybody's list in the podcast.
Yeah, I was looking. I think that may be the case because I was looking through. I actually went through everybody's last night and to see if.
But Devo, The Clash, AC/DC, Hüsker Du. They have folks have picked other records of theirs.
Yeah.
NoMeansNo's Wrong.
Oh, that's right.
Has actually been.
I know.
Okay.
I saw that. Jason Beers.
Beers.
I knew it. As soon as I saw Jason Beers' name, I'm like, oh, I know that record's going to be on here.
1989, 4th of 10, 11 tracks, 39 minutes. Jason was episode number 76. What's the Ron Drunkard story with NoMeansNo? I
heard their song 0 + 2 = 1 on the car stereo. KJHK was playing. It's the record after this one. And I was like, what the hell is this Devo sounding thing with big, fat, heavy bass and drums and stuff? And then, so I've got that record. That's actually the first one I ever had was 0 + 2 = 1. And that just blew me away. And so I think Wrong, I got pretty close thereafter, if not wasn't the very next one I found. I think maybe a buddy of mine had got it, and I copied his CD. And I mean, it musically it melted my head. I was like, holy shit, what are these guys doing? And what's really strange is I have a flyer from them playing the Outhouse. I don't, in like probably 87, right around the first year or two, I wasn't a guy that collected flyers, but initially I did collect a few, and that's one in my hand. I used to have it on a bulletin board forever. I have it somewhere. And I don't know if I went.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if it's one I didn't go to, if I went but didn't stay inside or watch them. I have no idea. I just don't remember it. But this would have been probably before this record came out, but they would have been playing songs from it. It would have been probably that 87 or 88. So right before this record came out. But yeah, this record just blew my mind. I mean, it is intense sonically,
that's an understatement.
musically. Yeah. It is from top to bottom, and the but it's also like got these just so sing-songy, and these breaks into these nursery rhyme like parts, and then just, I mean, they can play hardcore better than any hardcore band out there, and then they can do weird grind like metal riffs better than, and funky shit. I mean, it's like, it makes me like, it just lays waste to every band out there. Somebody's, oh, they're just brutal. They're a brutal band. I'm like, no, they just play loud and sludgy and the vocalist screams. They're not really playing that well. These guys can fucking play.
Yeah, yeah.
And they're so weird. And the lyrics are just so, they go back to the Devo stuff, just abstraction with meaning. And something these guys, if anything, NoMeansNo is like one of these bands I just don't like. I feel like I can get the sound of these other bands. Honestly, I can write a song as good as any of these bands have, but like, I feel like I can get something that is my homage to them. I don't know how to even come close to doing what they're doing. I want to, and I try to write songs that might have that effect. And maybe it's just because I'm not in a band with guys who are also NoMeansNo freaks or something. But like, to me, I'm just like, I don't even know how I told my girlfriend one time back I was in college, it's like, man, I get angry when I listen to them because they're so fucking good. She was like, yeah, I know. She's like, I noticed. I'm like, I don't, because I'm just like, damn it. Like, fuck, how do they do this?
Well, when it was on Jason's list,
what did he say about him? I didn't listen to that one yet.
A lot of high praise is all I can really off the top. But I remember looking at it being like, that is an interesting album title. It's also very interesting band name, and so automatically I'm like, that is probably going to be intense. And then I saw the album cover art, and I was like, this is about to be wild.
Yeah.
And then I put it on, I was like, yep, and yep.
Yeah.
This is bananas.
That guitar tone, I don't know what the hell they're doing on that guitar tone. They don't do that guitar tone on any of the other records.
Oh, okay.
It's really interesting. Like 0 + 2 = 1 is much cleaner. And their earlier records they're not produced quite. Again, I don't know who produced this record. I don't know the history about them that much. This record was really hard to get.
Well, they don't even have that big of a digital footprint,
no,
honestly.
They're so the information, I think I'm on a Facebook group there's talk about them reissuing now. Finally, some of these records are going to come out because a lot of them were on AT, Alternative Tentacles, and there's been issues with them, in reissuing some of these records. I think I pretty much have all of them at this point, because they're really hard to find too. And this one was out of print. I mean, this is the most expensive record. I've had the CD of this for a long time, but I finally found a vinyl copy because I'd never seen one. Until one came into Sister Ann's a couple of years ago, and it's the most money I've ever spent on a record.
Damn.
By $30, almost twice, because it's like it was clean, it was immaculate condition. I'm like, I'm buying this for my birthday. It was a birthday present to myself.
There you go.
Because I've never seen a copy of it.
I want to say, this is coming back to me a little bit now. I want to say that Jason said that there is a podcast solely dedicated to breaking down every single NoMeansNo track in order of that. Like, they're working their way, and he knows what number one's going to be. So he's just got to wait for them to get. I think that's. I
could completely believe that exists because the kind of people, the kind of nerds that listen to NoMeansNo would do that.
Right.
I mean, that's the kind of people. That's the kind of music fans NoMeansNo fans are. They're just, and so that's the kind of ADD, anal sort of OCD sort of thing that I could see them doing.
Yeah.
And
it's one of those. I think if I remember, I feel like he really enjoys the podcast, but hates it that he's got to wait to see that.
I'll have to check this out. Yeah. I mean, no, I just it's the it's just, again, it's like Devo with absurdity and but this punk rock ferocity that just blows me away. And then the bass the bass playing on this record, all their stuff is so good. I mean,
how does it sound on that piece of vinyl?
Oh, it sounds great. Actually, it's a really good,
because their track lengths are pretty short, right?
Yeah. And in fact, I think the vinyl version does not have all the same. It's good. There's 2 extra tracks on the CD, I think. So the vinyl's a little bit shorter. Yeah. But it sounded. I played it a couple of times. And it sounds huge.
How long have you been buying records?
Oh, I've always had records. I didn't. It's been sort of a slow thing through the 90s, and then it kind of really picked up after I moved back here.
Okay. Are you at hundreds?
Oh,
Are you thousands?
It's not thousands. I'd say it's probably between 1 and 2.
You have a room? A place?
Not really. I mean, in fact, one of the things that's been on my list to do for a long time is I need to do a major sort and reorganization.
How are they sorted right now?
Well, the older stuff is all sorted well by alphabetical order, by country, blues, R&B, rock, punk.
You have things in genre and then alphabetized within the genre.
Yeah,
nice.
But everything I've bought in the last 15 years, it just is loosely in different places in the house.
Oh,
because it's like I haven't had the time to sit down and say, I got to reorganize and expand. And so one thing I'm doing right now is I have an old house in Midtown, and the first floor's got a really bad sag in the dining room that we're trying to work out. And it's the spot where I want to put a stack of boxes. I have the crates and everything for the records, but I don't want to put the weight on it until we got this section leveled out.
Gotcha.
So that's going to be we got maybe a couple more lifts on that, and we'll be level. And that's a
couple more lifts.
Well, we put a new beam in, and we're doing a jack in the basement, so you got to do it a little bit at a time. A quarter inch or so.
Fascinating.
And then let it sit, and then do a little bit more, let it sit.
Wow.
And everything settle back down. And
okay.
Then, because you're trying to keep from cracking all the plaster walls and everything else and all that kind of stuff. So,
of course.
So that's next on my list, and then I'll know exactly what I've got, because I've also got like 2 or 3 boxes of records I've inherited from family members. I'm still sort of sorting through, like, oh, am I going to keep this or not? Like,
right.
What's the association? Oh yeah, there's some good songs on there. Okay, I'll keep that one. Do I need their greatest hits and their other version of the greatest hits and this other one's like, no, I need one of these, but you know.
Well, cool, man.
Like
this
that.
is a great list. I like to run through a short list of goofy questions before we wrap and get you out of here.
Yeah.
And it starts with you get to have lunch with anyone, dead or alive, you're choosing. Who's it going to be and why?
Wow. So do I go musically or do I go historically? That's a good question. Lunch.
Or coffee or a beer or whatever.
Beer. Well, since we're talking about records, I'll stick with music. I'll just say, I think I would... Joe Strummer, I think.
Oh, of...
The Clash.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I just, like... I still have lots of questions about that guy. He's an odd... there's a whole angle out there. It's, he was just in it for, that he wasn't really sincere about it, and there's people that say that, but then
there's lots of folks that give him high praise though.
But
right?
So it's just interesting, and I just think I'd like to just figure out, like, just get a sense for myself, like, where did he fall on all this stuff? Because that whole era of punk rock is so weird to me, because these guys were punks, but they were also getting on major labels, and they were doing the whole rock star thing while at the same time saying they rejected it, which is not unlike what, every band in the 90s did too. But it's so, there are a lot of people that say, oh, well, Strummer was a sellout and all this stuff. And they didn't really mean, it was all just a show, that the whole punk thing was fashion for them because they could get big as a record. And I think that's the people that I think felt that because they changed musical styles.
Oh yeah.
I think that's where that comes from. They didn't stay true to their punk rock stuff.
Okay.
But, I've seen that documentary about him and stuff, and it all paints him as, what he did after the Clash was he didn't become a big rock star. He went off and did his world radio show and did a lot of, community building type. He was a much more, what I've heard what he's said and read and what he's written and stuff. It's to me, I think it was all legit. But I just want to have that conversation, get a feel for like, what was really going on. But,
nice.
Yeah.
True or false? It is okay and acceptable to wear the T-shirt of the band whose show you're going to.
Don't do it, but I don't care if people do it.
Fair.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
And in fact, actually, I, as a guy in a band, when somebody wears my shirt to a show, I love it. So I can't say no, do it. There's like 3 people at the last show we played at Replay were wearing a Red Cage shirt, and I'm like, I ain't gonna complain about that.
Yeah. Hell yeah. You're given the ability to visit your past self at any age of your choosing. What age are you choosing, and what are you saying?
Oh, that one's easy. 1990, 7, 6, 7, 98, when I'm living in Sacramento, I would be, buy a house, dummy.
Buy a house?
Yeah.
Out there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because while I lived there, between 2000 and 2004, house prices more than doubled.
Okay.
And I was renting. And I fucking had to move like 3 years in a row because the landlords decided to sell the house because they were going to make money.
Yeah.
And I had the opportunity, like in 99, to buy a house that I had lived in with my girlfriend, but we split up. And I was all sad, and I couldn't stay in that place anymore. But the landlord was also splitting up with his wife, and he wanted to dump it and asked me if I wanted to buy it. And I could have got the thing for like $135,000
in California.
And it was a little bungalow in downtown Sacramento, but it was between 2 apartment buildings and across the street from a restaurant. I thought, this is not a good location. Blah blah blah. And that thing sold 2 more times before I moved, and I think the last time it was almost triple what he was selling it for. And I'm like, I could have bought a house in Kansas City with cash and not even had to have a job. I could have been retired. As though, yeah. If I was like, oh no, I'm just going to rent. I don't want the responsibility of a house. And what if I get stuck with it and can't sell it? Because Sacramento had been depressed for years economically. Like when I moved there, there were houses that had for sale signs in the front yard for like 6 years.
Wow.
I'd go by them every day on my bike, and just for sale, And I was like, nah, that's not going to happen. And so that's simple. That's like, oh man,
for sure.
But I didn't know about that shit then.
There's a podcast called The Pivot, and it's 3 retired professional athletes, Fred Taylor, Channing Crowder, and Ryan Clark, and they have like Shaq, Travis Kelce, not just athletes. They have people from all. And they had an episode recently where they had 2 gals on who also have their own podcast, and they get into this debate about. The gals are saying that they are suspect of any man that doesn't have female friends, and the dudes, they want to
they're right.
They want to explore that. They want to talk more about this, but they're also bristling a little bit at this notion. And one of them goes so far as to say, yeah, if Tammy calls and my wife sees that, she's going to be like, who the fuck is Tammy? But anyway, so she says, to iron things out, she says, if you only view women as someone you want to have sex with or as a family member, then you do not value women. Would you agree or disagree with
totally.
That? Okay.
Oh, totally, yeah. No, those girls aren't right. I mean, if you don't have female friends, then there's something off.
Okay.
I mean, they're right about, there are women that do not like you to have female friends.
Yep.
And I stay away from those people a long time ago. I was like, sorry, honey. My best friend is a woman.
Okay.
And she was the first girlfriend I ever had in college. We've been best friends ever since. And so it's always been like, to me, like I meet someone I'm dating, I'm like, well, you're going to have to be cool with that. I'm friends with everybody I've ever dated, except for a couple.
Right,
I'm just like, that's the way it is. And you can either trust it or not and understand that, like, I mean,
Do you have female friends that you didn't date?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the attraction or none of that stuff ever gets murky?
Oh, it always gets murky.
Okay.
I mean, not always. I'm saying it can get murky.
Okay.
I mean, there's, but it's not always been that way, and it's not, doesn't have to be that way. And it's actually, and as the older you get, the easier it is not to be that way.
Yeah.
But when people are young
Yeah.
and they're full of hormones,
Yeah.
I mean, it's just not the guy who's making things murky,
Yeah.
Everybody's just like, let's explore, so it's not, but yeah, I mean, but no, I've had women friends that were just friends from the beginning all the time, yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Please complete this for me. Okay. The world would immediately become a better place in which to live if only...
Well, this is too simple, but it's the point that matters. We got rid of billionaires.
Ooh, I like that.
I mean, that's the very simple one sentence answer to that question. I'm sure with inflation, you'd have to have some billionaires, but and you wouldn't even be that rich. But yeah, we have the fundamental current problem we have in politics around the world, and the reason democracy is in the state it's in around the world, and we're seeing this return to nationalism, neo-fascism in Europe, in America, Russia, India, with Modi's party, what they're doing over there, is concentration of wealth. And we are the pawns in a game being played by very rich interests that are not even country aligned anymore, because the global corporations don't give a fuck about what country they belong in. GM does more business outside of the U.S. than it does in the U.S. Oh, by several times.
Wow.
Ford, same way. All these corporations, they're American only because their headquarters are here.
I see.
Their interests are, you have multiple corporations, hundreds really, that are larger than most economies of the world, nation economies, right? And they're the ones pulling the strings, and they're run by very wealthy people, and it's their interest. It's not unlike, we are in a situation that is not unlike the power dynamics that you had in Europe in the turn of the 20th century, with the remaining what's left over kingdoms and fiefdoms and and these burgeoning democracies, but really sort of still autocracies, and where what you look at when you go to the World War I museum, if you read the whole thing, you're just like, Jesus, there is no cause to. World War I is such a clusterfuck of shit going on.
By the way, impossible to get through that in one.
Yeah, it's like at least 3 days.
Yeah.
I did it in 2, and I still I rushed it.
Yeah, yeah.
But you look at all. It was like breakdown. You had all these tangled alliances that all just slowly come apart. And there's the assassination of Ferdinand kind of triggers some things, but you have all this stuff going on. And I feel like today we're in a situation where these corporations and countries, and there's this tangling of webs and interests. To some degree, those webs are holding us together because it's money. Nobody likes instability,
right?
Except still a lot of people still make a lot of money off instability. They say, oh, nobody really likes a war because it's bad for business, except for the guys making the bombs. Now, it's bad for people who sell consumer goods, yes, but the guys who profit in war, they still do well. So I think that there's just, we got to break, the monopolies have to be broken up. Look, Shelley, we're talking about what people understand about what's going on today. We have this inflation problems, and the reason we have them is because we have consolidated almost all the industries, like, what is this? Like, 2/3 or 75% of your major industries are more consolidated today than they were 10 years ago.
Wow.
And
recent.
Yeah, corporate profits are up record highs. The share of revenue going to profit is high at a higher rate than it's ever been. And they're still raising prices. Well, how do you do that? Because you have monopoly power. You have monopoly pricing power, or at least you have oligopoly pricing power. You and your couple other.
What is this? So, oligopoly?
Well, meaning you've got like 2 or 3 major, rather than just one business controls it, you've got 2 or 3 companies that control 60, 70% of the market.
Gotcha.
And they don't have to they don't have to collude, because they just go, we're going to raise the prices. And the guy goes, yeah, that's all I. It's just a nod and a wink. Because there's no real competition, because you've each carved out your share of the market. Shit. And that's what's going on. And, Robert Reich he's got this shit all nailed down. He knows what's going on. The data's out there. You just got to look at it. And so when I say about, no billionaires, what I really mean is we need to bust the trusts need to be busted again. It's time to break up big tech. It's time to break up. Look what's going on with Boeing. Why is Boeing like it is? Because there is no competition. There's Airbus, and that is it. And you have no competition. They can do whatever they want. We've deregulated them, and then they have no competition. So the whole point of deregulation was, competition will keep everybody honest and keep things safe. Well, that's fine if there's competition. Once competition goes away, it was questionable if that was true anyway, but let's say it's true. Well, then you take care of then the competition goes away because the monopoly. Well, then there's no check on what's going on. And so you end up with, you start to end up with safety problems, and you end up with other kind, so I think that...
what is that? Like doors have come off a plane? Like what?
Oh, yeah. There's a number of whistleblowers out of Boeing right now. There's just dozens of people saying, look, these things aren't safe. We've been trying to report on bad parts because what they've done, this sidetrack, but I just heard a big piece on this the other day. When the new Boeing's management changed about 10 or 15 years ago, and basically got run by a bunch of Wall Street guys, not long-term aviation people. And they started farming out a lot of the production of the parts to overseas, cheapest bidder. And so they started getting in all these parts they used to make themselves. They're getting defective parts showing up. And this one guy called into this show I was listening to, he says, yeah, well, we were being ordered to go into this closet where we would throw the defective parts and in order to use them to get the production, keep the plane's production going.
Oh shit!
So this is something we would have never done in the past.
Right.
If it was a defective part, it never got used. And we had guys on management come down on the floor telling us to go get those parts out of those closets and use them. And because we had to keep the line running. So this is the kind of shit that happens when you don't have either A, government oversight, and B, more importantly, you have no competition. Look at farmers. I mean, it crosses everybody. It's urban and rural. I mean, you've got two poultry producers control like 70-80% of the market. You have 3 beef packers or 4 beef packers control. You've pork is now like 1 or 2, 3 companies control the majority of the pork processing. They're all controlling the price the farmers are getting for their product. So the food prices are up. Farmers aren't getting any more money. They're still getting the same shitty rate they were getting before. Like nobody bids on your cow when you take it to market anymore. The price has been set. This is what you're going to sell it for.
Yeah.
I mean, so. Anyway, that's my long answer to your short question.
I like it. Thank you. That's good stuff. So, Ron Drunkard, thank you again. Red Kate on Facebook, Instagram, Apple, Spotify, Bandcamp, YouTube. Is there anything that you hoped that we would cover that we didn't?
I think we got everything. We have the show. Oh, we have a show June 1st at Many Bar. With a band called The Itch out of Joplin, some good buddies of ours. They haven't been up here in a long time. And Arson Class is going to play on that show with us at Minibar. Cool. And The Itch is awesome. The Itch is The Itch, I call them like deconstructed garage music. Like it's garage rock, but it's fucked up. Like old 60s, it's like 60s style garage rock, like turned sideways and like sawed on somehow.
Nice.
And I love those guys, and they're coming up. And then we're going to play in July at Farewell, July 17th at Farewell with Blacklist Royals and the Uncouth.
Okay.
And if you are a lead guitar player and looking for a band, we might need your services. So you should hook us up. You look us up if you're interested in playing some rock and roll.
Yeah. black-site.org/red-kate.
That's us.
For the website.
No, is it red? Is it red? Is it hyphen in the red? I can't remember.
I think it
might be. I don't. Yeah, it probably is.
But the important links are in the Red Kate's bio portion of the Instagram.
Oh yeah, all Facebook. We've got all that stuff on our. We've got all that on there. Cool. So
man, it's really nice to meet you.
Yeah,
fun
thanks for having me on. This has been great.
Appreciate you. Talk to you soon.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you, man.